Hello and welcome to another episode of Arkham Unboxes, the show where we transform games from their box to their unboxed state. On this episode we will be taking a look at the third edition of the Arkham Horror board game from Fantasy Flight Games. It comes in the standard size FFG box. On the back it tells you that this is a cooperative game of mystery and terror for 1 to 6 players aged 14 and up, and they estimate that it takes 2 to 3 hours to play. And it lets you know that it's basically a Cthulhu game. There is also a recommendation on the number of Fantasy Flight's official card sleeves if you wanted to protect your cards. Removing the lid and breathing in that delightful new game smell, you are greeted by the rulebooks on the top. Next up are a whopping 6 sheets of tokens which are all shrink wrapped together. There are 6 plastic stands, 1 for each player, and 6 dice. Also presumably 1 for each player. There is a massive pack of tiny cards, a tiny pack of massive cards, and 2 jumbo packs of regular board game sized cards. There is plenty of room to easily fit everything back in, and an odd insert once again proving that FFG games are mostly hot air. That is everything you get in the box. Thanks for watching, and that concludes this unboxing of the Arkham Horror Third Edition from Fantasy Flight Games. Or at least it would, if we weren't the Arkham Chronicle. Looking at the box itself, it is the standard size FFG box measuring about a foot square by 3 inches deep, and it has the full colour artwork that goes all the way round the edges. Here is a size comparison with the smaller living card game box. It is a thick and robust cardboard that will happily cope with being shoved in a bag or filled to the brim with future expansions. Other than the shrink wrap, there is no extraneous packaging. If you carefully cut the plastic all the way around and then remove the bottom square, you can tape around the edges of the lid to prolong the life of your box. This is handy if you aren't sure if you want to keep the game or sell it or trade it. The box base has the new logo all the way round, so kudos to FFG for not plastering it with adverts. The first thing you see are the rulebooks, which look to be American legal rather than A4 in paper size. Both are full colour, folded and stapled. Like many FFG games, this uses a dual book system, with your learn to play guide acting as a tutorial and a rules reference for looking up how things work when they arise in play. On the inside cover it begins with a bit of flavour text to set the scene, a summary of what the game is about and the genre it belongs to, plus how to use the 2 books to learn comprehensively. Page 3 is all the components in the box, with the handy colour photographs including rudimentary assembly instructions for your event deck holder. Then it takes you through game setup with plenty of pictures and uses one of the scenarios as an example. So if you follow along, you'll be ready to start playing straight away. You are halfway through the book when it launches into how to play the game. Again with plenty of pictures, and it uses sidebars to add additional detail to try and keep things as intuitive as possible. The rules go all the way to the back page, which is shared with the credits for a total of 16 pages. The 24-page rules reference is virtually devoid of pictures, examples and sidebars. There is a short reminder that you shouldn't use this to learn to play. Then a couple of golden rules on how to deal with conflicts in the game mechanics, plus which components are intentionally limited, like the game cards, and which are not, like the tokens and dice. It uses a paragraph numbering system throughout, so if you are sending in rules questions or discussing things online, you can easily reference what you are highlighting. It breaks down each step of setup, round structure and end of game, and when it references another rule it gives you the paragraph number in parentheses. After explaining how both mechanical and flavour text is used in the game, it has an alphabetical list of all the game terms, from ability label to watcher. Then there is a 1.5-page index which only refers to this reference guide. What is good is that it sends you straight to the paragraph number. What is bad is that this black on grey text is the smallest ever used in the history of board games. If you don't have perfect lighting and perfect vision, you are in trouble. Expect FFG to be buying shares in a chain of ophthalmologists. On the back is a limited reference, which you will only really need for your first game or two, but separating it from the Learn to Play guide makes things easier. You get 6 dice, which are black with white pips in the standard configuration. They do feel quite small, which is not what you want if you have big hands, small children or hungry pets. They are roughly ½ an inch per side or just over a centimetre, and for size comparison we have used the US cent, 1 krona, 2 euros and the British bad penny. They do have both rounded corners and edges. You also get 6 plastic stands for supporting your investigator markers, which are reasonably stable with a small footprint. These are specially designed for the extra thick card in this game and won't work with standard game cards. They have 2 lugs with 3 teeth on the inside to grip firmly. As this is rigid plastic, these won't relax over time. You have probably already spotted that you have 6 stands and 12 investigators. Pause this video right now and pre-order some extra stands. Your tokens are covered in textured paper, and the socketing and removal of these will rip them to shreds pretty much instantly. There are 16 oversized cards in their own bag. 4 of these are scenario sheets and 12 of these are investigator sheets. Both of these types are double-sided. Cleverly, on the rear of each is the setup instructions for that character or scenario, which you only use pre-game. And on the front is the game mechanics used during play, so you never have to flip these over mid-game. They measure 10 centimeters by 12.7 centimeters, or if you still live in caves, 4 inches by 5 inches. There are 187 of these mini cards that measure 40mm by 63mm, or 1 10/16 by 2.5 inches if you've yet to discover fire. These are the same size mini cards that FFG uses in its other games, like X-Wing for example. They are divided into 8 types. 4 have a plain back marking their card type with game text on the other side. 1 has investigator specific backs with game text on the other side. The largest set are the monster cards, which have functional game text on both sides. Your dark packs have the same mechanics on one side and a unique result on the back. And your condition cards are basically 2 separate cards placed back to back to save space and cost. You never flip them over, they are either blessed or cursed. A small touch is they have their own bag design with the opening on the longest side, allowing you to pull out a single card or group of cards if you wanted. The largest quantity are the regular sized cards, thank goodness, and there are a lot of types, and it isn't as straightforward to sort them as you think. The simplest are these headline cards, which you draw when you are told to. They have a common back with a folded newspaper design and unique text on the rear. Actually, the simplest and most valuable are these player reference cards. You get 6 and they are double-sided with the round sequence on one side and the player actions on the other. If you have less than 4 players, it is great to take 2 each, so you don't need to flip. There are 36 anomaly cards, but these are broken down into 3 sets of 12, each having a distinctive back and title. They all have 3 potential effects depending on the game state, packing in replayability without increasing card count. And this multi-use design is found on the bulk of the cards, with many of them holding the equivalent of 3 cards worth of mechanics. And as you play the game, you will see that some cards perform even more than 3 functions through additional symbols. The most common type are these cards that reference different locations on the board. This is where it gets tricky, as these 3 cards all have identical backs, and you'd think they'd be shuffled together, but they're actually 3 different types of cards. These are encounter cards, which start in a deck in play. These are event cards, which have a different colour and a magnifying glass icon in the top left. They have a different numbering system on the bottom right, and also a name in the bottom left. These start in a separate deck and are shuffled into the encounter deck when you are told to. Finally, you have the archive cards, which don't have a different colour or name, but do have a big number in the top left, which is repeated in the bottom right. These only get added if the setup instructions for your particular scenario tells you to, otherwise they remain in the box. Looking closer at the archive cards, these are what changes the game based on the scenario you are playing, and may look like other card types such as encounter cards or monster cards, and may have permanent modifications or tasks for you to complete in order to flip them for an effect. These measure 56 by 89mm or 2¼ by 3½ inches in old money. This is important as they are smaller than normal trading card games. Although they are the same height, they are noticeably thinner, which is important when it comes to sleeving and storing. Moving on to the token sheets, these are chunky 2mm thick card with a textured paper glued to each side. Some of the items are grouped by type, such as the investigator tokens or activation tokens, and the rest are spread wherever there was space. FFG products normally have strong clean cuts, so identify which side the cutting blade went in by the noticeable groove and push through firmly from this side. They should pop out easily with no tearing. These are the investigator tokens measuring 31mm by 44 and have an arched top. When they are in their stands they are 5 centimeters high. They are double-sided with the same picture on both faces. The rest of the tokens fall into 2 types, round tokens and shape tokens. The round tokens come in 3 different sizes. Starting with the largest, we have 5 anomaly tokens, which are the same on both sides. These are sized to fit the centre of the board pieces, so you want them visible from a distance. Next up are the 10 marker tokens, which have a common face on one side and different designs on the rear. The scenario will tell you what each of the symbols means in that context. Then you have the 6 activation tokens, allowing you to track which players have acted and which are yet to act, because there are different colours on each side. One of them is slightly different to mark which player you have chosen as your leader. If you are playing solo with multiple investigators, you can use these to keep track of your investigators' 2 actions, just in case you get called away to change the goat, for example. And you don't need to flip them back at the end of each round, unlike some other Arkham games. Moving on to the 18 Mythos tokens. These have 7 different designs and are the same on both sides. That blank looking token isn't a spare, it's a real functioning token. Your scenario sheet tells you what quantity of each token to use for that game, and it is a fundamental way the play experience is different for each scenario. Stepping down to the smallest size, these are the focus tokens that modify your investigator skills. There are 30 in total, 6 for each skill, and they are the same on both sides. There are 24 remnant tokens, which are also identical on each face, and 48 tokens which all have the clue symbol on one side and the doom symbol on the other. That's all the round tokens. Next up are the 3 pairs of tokens which are cut to match their picture: damage tokens, horror tokens, and money tokens. In order to save space and keep down component numbers, each has a larger multiple token representing 3 or 5 respectively. They are the same on both sides, so you can't accidentally flip them to a different value. Here again are the round tokens for comparison, and you can see that the brain token is tiny, so expect a trip to the ER to have it extracted from a small child's ear or nose. This is what they look like in play. The great thing is, if they get knocked off, it doesn't matter, unlike using trackers or sliders. Even if they flip over, you are fine. And you can definitely fit plenty of them on your investigator sheet without obscuring any game text. If you want to bag absolutely everything separately, including each of the focus tokens, you will need 17 bags, pots or compartments. If all the focus tokens are lumped together, then 13. If both denominations of damage, horror and money are combined, then a mere 10. As with all FFG tokens, these aren't waterproof, tea-proof or curry resistant, just so you know. There is a card holder for your event deck to allow you to draw cards from both the top and bottom easily. It consists of 5 pieces that you need to self-assemble. It is straightforward and robust and only slightly problematic to store. This game uses a 12-piece modular board consisting of 5 large neighbourhood tiles and 7 streets that are used to connect them. Both components are double-sided with different faces, and there are 3 varieties of street which have both a different picture and symbol. The scenario sheet will tell you which neighbourhoods to use and which streets to connect them by matching up the icons. All neighbourhoods have 6 connectors, so the amount of map combinations and thus replay for future scenarios is high. A small tip when putting these things together is to find the side where the cutting blade went through, which will have the rounded edge as opposed to the sharp edge on the reverse. Do this for both pieces, and don't try and interlock them with similar sides face up. Flip one over, so both cut sides with the rounded edges are meeting, and they will connect much more smoothly, especially for your first few games. Every neighbourhood tile is divided into 3 locations with high contrast lines, and each has a separate title. These neighbourhood tiles have their own colour, which matches the encounter card back to help make setup easier. The artwork is stunning, with all of Arkham depicted at night, and most of the buildings actually match the names of the locations too. The Learn to Play guide only mentions the 5 tiles you use in the first scenario plus the streets. If there are 10 possible neighbourhoods, then why are there only 8 different decks? Because Northtown appears twice and so does Easttown. If you look closely, there is a symbol next to each duplicate neighbourhood, so the setup instructions can tell you which version to use. Initially we were pretty disappointed by this duplication, but if every face is unique, then you can never have certain combinations of tiles appear together, which actually cuts down your replayability and design space. All in all, if you can put up with these shocking bright lines on the street edges, this is a sound system. The great thing is, unlike a purely tiled board which can grow to epic lengths, you can have the same footprint and just change the way the tiles are connected. So this epic sausage map here can be compacted into a much more practical space like so. This game goes up to 6 players, and these location spaces can get very crowded, particularly as all your investigations start at the same location. Although you don't have to put your token on the board until it is your turn. The problem comes when you have to try and spawn the monsters on the board. As these are double-sided, you really need to lay them flat. An advantage with the street connectors is that they spread the tiles out, so there should always be a bit of extra space adjacent to your location. Every turn a player will be drawing tokens unseen from a container for a random effect. The trouble is you don't get a container. This is obviously for cost reasons, as anything they provided would have to be dirt cheap. You can use a cup, a bowl or a small box, but we recommend a freestanding dice bag that will pack flat and can easily be stored in the box under the smaller of the flaps. This game has a number of strong accessibility choices that we were impressed with. The tokens use size, colour, shape and symbols, and any numbers are reasonably bold. There is plenty of contrast, so no yellow on white or brown on black. And where the tokens look similar, they are a different size to try and help you. Well, mostly. We appreciated that the damage, horror and money had different sizes for each denomination, and they used orientation being vertical, horizontal and diagonal. As these are the tokens you will interact with most, key helpers like these are invaluable. The dice are high contrast with large pips but a little small in size. The investigator tokens are nice and chunky. There are a lot of cards and tokens, some of which are quite small, and you'll be doing a lot of handling and moving components, particularly if you're playing solo. The cards can be quite tricky to pick up from a hard table surface, but this would improve with card sleeves. Speaking of cards, there is a lot of reading in this game, so if this is a challenge for you or you aren't playing in your native language, be aware. And Fantasy Flight seems to be on a mission to make text as small as possible, so expect the FAQ to come out etched on the head of a pin. The most disappointing thing for us was how similar the colours were for the neighbourhoods, both on the board and on the cards themselves. There are 2 tiles that use blue and 2 that use green. If both of these had been on different faces of the same tile, then you would never have 2 blue or 2 green encounter cards in any scenario, making things much clearer. And as for using 3 reds, that's bonkers. You may be wondering why the channel in the insert is off-centre. Well, all the cards in this game make it very heavy, so if you want to stand it face out on a store shelf, the centre of gravity needs to be as low as possible to stop it toppling over, and injuring any litigious customers. After punching out all the components, we've put them back in the box, and as you can see, so far so good. We've put our investigators, including the ones on the stands, in the little event deck holder. We've got 2 stacks of streets in the middle, on top of the mini cards, the dice, and the oversized cards at the bottom. And here are the 2 regular card size stacks. There's nothing under the little flap, but underneath the big flap we've popped all of our tokens in jiffy bags. Try as you might, you won't be able to fit more than 1 map section in the box without them overlapping, unfortunately. You do still have room for the manuals to go on top and the lid to close. So that concludes this world-class unboxing of the Arkham Horror 3rd Edition board game.